Well, I've been a meat inspector for the last 13 years. We went up to check the rails and the chiller. It was all right on the way up, but we come down a little bit quicker than I thought.
In 1975, an accident in the bone room. I severed all tendons and nerves in my wrist.
Threw the hand up to try and stop the carcass from falling through the point, and down she come, knife and all, straight through the hand. I really wish it hadn't happened.
I wish it hadn't happened. A phrase we've all heard before. 3 meat inspectors who, because of one split second of carelessness, inattention, or just bad luck, have had to change their whole lifestyles because of an injury in the workplace. Abattoirs generally present a hostile working environment. Injuries to meat inspectors throughout Australia cause the loss of thousands of working hours each year. This represents a huge financial loss to a major Australian primary industry. Not to mention the physical pain, needless suffering, and more than often, the financial inconvenience that these injuries cause to the individual and their families. We asked a number of senior meat inspectors to discuss some of the problems that are faced by inspectors in Australian abattoirs.
We don't seem to have such bad accidents now that we've got the hooks.
I don't know. The hooks don't do a real lot for me, especially on the pigs. You use them on that and you can't stretch that cheek right out to cut with.
I think you can use hooks on beef. There's certain positions on beef you can
he's
use.
talking about I just said, that's right, I said the pigs. But even on the beef, they're only good for a couple of cuts. They're good for the bovis cut in the cheeks and for the parotid on the cheeks, and after that, they don't do much for me.
It depends on how experienced you get using them. I've seen blokes do most of their work with the hook.
I don't think they're a good thing for pigs' heads. Pigs' heads is one of those things that's got to be learnt and they've got to be done properly.
Yeah, well, I agree.
I suppose it's better
probably difficult.
Hitting the hook than hitting your finger.
Oh, that's right.
Yes, well, now, wait a minute. Now, let's get something quite clear. Hooks are not new. They were used when I was a boy. And, man, that's a long time ago.
That's right.
They went out of use.
There's a big gap between then and now.
That's right, but they're coming back into use to try and avoid and stop so many.
Well, Jim, I haven't seen them all the time I've been on the job.
I tell you what.
I'm sorry.
When
they
knives
were certainly in use pre-war.
When knives hit hooks, they tend to blunt the knives. Everybody knows that. And blunt knives tend to cut more than sharp knives. You'd nick yourself with a sharp knife.
If you're on a moving chain and they're coming through all the time and you've got a blunt knife, you haven't got time to stop. If you stop the chain, you've got the company screaming.
Yes, but you can...
How would you go stopping a chain to sharpen a knife?
You can use a hook.
I'd sooner have a
if you're prepared to try and learn to use it.
You've got to learn to be efficient with a hook, and that's all. That's the name of the game. And if with pigs' heads, and you know yourself, your knife, if you've been using them all morning and it gets around lunchtime and your knife's getting blunt, and you're going to start pushing that knife and turning the cheeks out, you'll go straight through, hit your knuckles. Which do you want, the hook or your knuckles?
Yes, sure, but the situation has not altered. You must get used to using the hook. If you cut the hook, it doesn't go to hospital. Now we're trying to get these younger people to use them to avoid the large, let's face it, bad accidents, unnecessary accidents.
There's less nicks and more big accidents.
That's true, but don't forget the speed of the chains has increased, as I said, and
the areas we work in haven't got any bigger. That's the trouble. They
certainly haven't got any bigger. In some instances, we find that the slaughtermen are encroaching onto our area.
Well, there should be restricted areas for inspection staff.
Well, I suppose that's a plus for the hook then. Better work in there. If you've got a hook and you're bumped or something, it cuts the hook and it doesn't cut your finger.
We shouldn't be bumped. We should not be bumped.
We shouldn't be.
Yes, but inevitably, when they push mutton on a chain, you're going to get... It's got to finish somewhere. Now, as long as it doesn't finish on your hand when you've got a knife in it.
It's a proven fact and well-known fact that there's many more accidents on mutton than there is on beef.
Oh, yeah, but the beef carcass is so much larger.
And they're not going as fast.
And it's not as congested. There's not as many inspectors working on each carcass in the same sort of area. You've just got to be careful on mutton.
I think that mutton is a very viable situation because you've seen probably the worst accidents you've seen, I reckon, on the mutton floor. We can all give quotations of bad accidents, I suppose, but I've seen an extremely bad accident where one fellow was cutting the pre-scap one side of the chain and another fellow was cutting the pre-scap the other side of the chain, and the fellow from the back pre-scap dropped the gland and when he cut it down, it was still hanging by tissue, and when the tissue was hanging there, the fellow that was working opposite to him on the back one put his hand on the neck, and the fellow on the front one got the knife and cut the gland away. Naturally cutting straight across the back of his hand.
I think you can get caught on the ischiatics just as easy. You've got a bloke working around the front, he's checking the inside of the carcass, and he sticks his hand up in the channel to make sure it's clear, and you've got a bloke coming down cutting the ischiatics with a knife from the back. And
Geez, I've seen some bad ones like that.
Yeah, you get a lot like that.
Yeah. This is it, on mutton carcasses you can relate a lot of bad accidents. There are some on beef too, but I think they're more prevalent on mutton.
You've got 6 or 7 working on the one carcass.
As Sid knows, there's plenty of times that you've seen fellas dropping soft-sided briskets, and the man at the back of the pre-scaps has had his hand on the neck and straight over his knuckles.
Yeah. I was working one day doing the pre-scaps on mutton. I'm working away. There's a guy in the front of me, and he's going to open up a soft-sided brisket. And as while I'm working away, he's gone bang down through the brisket, and the knife just skinned the end of my knuckles. But geez, it was close. It could have taken the whole lot off. One fraction of an inch either side. Just like Kenny Robbo did that day, mate.
Last year, I was working on the final inspection point on the pigs, and had a carcass that needed further inspection. So I opened a point to run it out, and as I was running it out, another carcass rolled back. I tried to stop it from falling, and I ran the carcass, the knife, straight through the hand as the carcass fell to the ground. Consequently, I was off work with a lacerated tendon for a total of 8 months. I had 3 operations on the hand. It still feels a bit tight, you know, and it still gives me a bit of pain when I hold a knife all day. Or playing tennis or squash, I just haven't got the same game I had before. Had a few money problems at the time. We just bought our house, and I wasn't getting any overtime, so I thought, this is no good. I'm home, I've got plenty of time, but I can't earn any money. I've got my hand all bandaged up. So my wife had to go to work for a while so we could pay a few bills. I was going to the doctor every week and physio every day. It really does affect your life. You say, oh, you'll get over it.
Let's face it, in an abattoir, everybody's got a lethal weapon in their hand, and it's a highly dangerous place to work.
I think you've got to agree. Mutton is very dangerous.
Gee, I don't know. Just doing those glands, your fingers are so close to them.
The main accidents you'd have, Ted, would be more down the stockyards, wouldn't they? You wouldn't strike many accidents on the floor.
That's true. I was only in the pens this morning, and they had I did the sheep first, and they had some wild rams, and the rams this time were running everywhere, and one of them ran right into the orchestra pit.
You laugh about these situations, but I've seen mad cows in pens myself, and if they come straight at you and there's nowhere to go, you'll go over the fence, a 6-foot fence. Everywhere in an abattoirs there's an accident waiting to happen.
There's no doubt about that. You get the walking across the floor, and if you're not watching where you're going, there's a piece of fat there. You've only got to stand, you know, and you're at it. You're in trouble. And then all coming down off the stands, Lenny.
Well, the steps are the old-style steps, or some as the same as they are now, when they're plate steel with a certain amount of corrugation, that sort of thing. They're very slippery, and they're prone to get bits of fat on them, and that sort of thing.
Fat builds up in them, and they don't wash them down.
That's right.
It's just a straight level of fat.
As a result, as you know, there's plenty of meat inspectors, and there's plenty of meat industry employees that have slipped, hurt their back.
Didn't we have one bloke in the bush that got a buster off one of those stands?
Yeah,
done his shoulder or something.
And the morning I had my accident, we were doing pre-operational hygiene in a chiller. We'd put a ladder up to check some rails out. I went up all right, but the ladder slipped, and we both come down awful fast. As a result, I landed across the ladder, smashing the wrist and the elbow. As a result, there wasn't too much bone left in the elbow, and the doctor had to reattach muscle that was normally where the funny bone is, further around. This resulted in the arm being like that. But extensive physiotherapy for 9 months, We got the arm back up to there. There's a lot of pain involved, but this has affected strength and in my personal life. It is greatly affected in the way that I can't play tennis, and I've got a hobby farm, and there's a lot of things there that requires another person to help me now, where I could do it before by myself. And this is not always available when you're doing something, might be down the paddock or anywhere, and you've got to sing out, hey, you want help. As a result of my accident, it's made me more conscious as a supervisor that safety comes first.
As a young bloke, if you fall over, you can generally pick yourself up, but you get, a little older, in your late 30s, 40s, maybe even older, you fall over then you can hurt yourself bad.
Well, this is why you've got to take care, because it's inevitable that in an abattoir you're going to get fat on the floor. You're going to get blood on the floor somewhere along the line. And with the best will in the world, it's never going to be completely clean. You've got to be careful.
It's going to be a lot worse if you've got your knife in your hand when you go down.
Well, that's not the first time that's happened.
Muscular injuries.
You never walk around with your knife in your hand. Always in your kit.
You do.
Just take a step and you could, one step and you have your knife in your hand and fall over.
Yes, of course, but then don't forget that the Metropolitan Meat Industry Board have got a regulation that their employees are not allowed to walk or run with a knife in their hand. They must put it in a pouch.
Yeah, well, one of our blokes in the bush, a bloke called Johnny Nathan, he was working with, on beef, and the body's come down just as he must have had his knife there, something like that, and it's come right down across his wrist.
In 1975, I had an accident in a bone room. I severed all tendons and nerves in my left wrist. I have to work constantly to this very date to regain full use or partial use of my hand. I was given a ball to work on. Nerves, I had to use different courses of sandpaper and rocks to get the nerve endings moving. I have done this every day for the last 3 years, and I'm constantly doing it. I think at the moment, if I stopped, I think so would the mechanics of my hand.
You got a burn?
Oh, my word. A new labourer, first day on the plant, pushed a barrow of offal onto the stand that I was on, up into the steriliser that it was behind me, into my gumboots.
Could you get your boots on?
Oh, with a bit of flesh.
You know, Jimmy, a lot of our fellas get burnt with their hose, trying to wash their boots,
yes,
the hose slips down and you get a boot full of hot water. Same result.
I've seen that happen,
you see it often enough.
You talk about physical accidents. What about industrial diseases? Especially when reactors are slaughtered. As long as you wear the right protective clothing, you all got a good chance of not catching them.
I think industrial diseases are one of our worst cases of, not accidents, but diseases that are virtually incurable. A lot of our inspectors have been hospitalised for a long time and are still sick after many years through contact with industrial diseases.
You're talking about brucell and lepto, aren't you?
That's right. And Q fever had come into that one. As you know, Q fever has an effect on a man's life for the rest of his days. I don't think that these things ought to be come short.
The thing is, most people recover, with nothing more than as though they had the flu. They recover quite normally, but there's a small percentage that are permanently affected. They have some sort of permanent impairment.
But as you know, you never really know whether it's going to reoccur on you. If it reoccurs on you, everyone says, oh, he's back with the same old disease that has killed people in the past.
I think at the moment, if I stopped, I think so would the mechanics of my hand.
I really wish it hadn't happened.
I hope all meat inspectors come to realise that these sort of accidents do happen, and when it happens to you, it's a little too late.